Hey guys, welcome to Tokyo Creative Talk, where we bring you the latest news and hot topics from Japan. Today we have our great guest, Christopher.
Yes, from the original series, I was on here quite often. Kind of took a sabbatical.
You took a very long sabbatical. Yes. I'm manning this myself now.
Sorry. We've been doing a great job, so.
Really? Yeah. Thank you. I'm glad. But yeah, we have you back here today because recently there was some big news. Naomi Osaka won the Australian Open, which is huge because that's her second straight Grand Slam final that she won, which is amazing. And that kind of brought me back to when she first won the US Open, and it was so controversial. She cried because people were booing her, which was terrible. And the other issue was the fact that she was mixed race and representing Japan as a half black, half Japanese woman. And that was like it was kind of, really contradictory because people tend to shun foreigners in Japan. Yeah. But once they represent your country and they win, they're like, oh, yay, you're Japanese. And they finally accept you as one of them.
Well, actually, after she won the Australian Open most recently, Japanese media were trying to interview her. And they wanted her to speak Japanese in the interview, actually. And so that was actually another big debate where basically, and then she responded saying, I'm going to answer in English. And then there's kind of like a big controversy about is she really Japanese if she doesn't interview in Japanese as well. Yeah.
That's very true. So it's hard to kind of be accepted when you're mixed race, especially when you're representing countries in sports, I would say. But in general, just being mixed race in Japan or in Asia, I think comes with a lot of its own challenges. And I think you did a video about this like ages ago, being half...
Two videos, actually.
You did 2 videos?
It's actually one of my best videos talking about being half in Japan.
Oh, really?
With a YouTuber a while back, actually, like 3-4 years ago. And then I made another one about being half Mexican and half Japanese with one of our former employees that actually did really well, too.
Oh wait, I think I remember that. It was kind of a vlog style video.
It was. Actually, it was in the studio. So
it was here.
Yeah.
I remember that. Okay. That's exciting. And also, I did a video like this too, like ages ago.
Really?
Remember with Max?
We whole channel's about being half Japanese.
Yeah, it started out as being a half Japanese channel. Okay. So this is an issue that we've talked about quite a bit. But today, we have a very, very special guest actually on the show. Not him. He's not that special.
Unfortunately.
We have an actual special guest today. And this guest is very special because she is known to be one of the first half Japanese TV personalities in Japan, as well as half Japanese singers. So she kind of started the whole scene where half Japanese people are starting to be more accepted in Japanese culture and Japanese television. And this person that we have, she goes by the name of Maggie Minenko. And she just happens to also be Chris Okano's mother.
Yeah!
So welcome, Maggie Minenko! Hi, how are you?
Hi. I'm fine.
Good.
How's everything? Hi, Shizuka-chan.
Hi. Things are great over here. We're really, really excited to have you today. And
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, we're so glad to have you. I think everyone is super excited to hear what you have to say. And I think people have been asking for an interview, right? With your mom.
So if you guys do want to see a more full-on interview about not just about being half Japanese, but kind of history of my mom, then you can check that out on my channel, Okano TV. Actually, I recently uploaded a lot of family vlogs, and everyone thinks that my mom is now the real MVP of my channel. So now everyone wants to see more Maggie Minenko, not more Chris. But okay, but we're gonna give you guys what you want, and we're gonna interview her, fully. Maybe I don't know how long it's gonna be, depending on how much time my mom can give me.
She's a busy lady.
She's such a busy lady.
Chris is like, can you interview tomorrow? She's like, no, I am a famous performer and I don't have time for you.
So actually right now we are Skyping her we're in Tokyo and she's in Los Angeles. And we want to kind of discuss about her being recently actually on TV. Being interviewed by the very famous Karen Takizawa, said that correctly?
Yeah, that's right.
Talking about being kind of how she was a half talent in Japan.
They were basically on a search for who was the original half talent who.
Oh, that was the theme of the.
Yeah, that was
Oh.
the. Did you watch your
I did.
own mother's show?
My Japanese is not that
I watched
good.
it,
All right?
and
My
I
Japanese
know.
is not that good.
But yes, the whole premise of the show was who started out this whole half Japanese talent trend in Japan, and they interviewed a whole bunch of talents from 40, 50 years ago.
I vote for my mom.
But in the end, it turned out that actually Maggie Minenko is probably the
winner?
the original.
Yeah.
So you're the OG half Japanese performer in Japan, which is amazing. So how was your experience going back to Japan after so many years and being featured on a variety show and being told that you were the original half Japanese talent?
OG.
The OG. How do you feel about that?
Well, it was really exciting. But then the thing is, I was on TV 21 years ago. Several times, the Japanese TV network have called me and asked me to come to Japan. And I think I did 2 of those. One was when they came to London, when I lived in London. They wanted to see what Maggie Minenko was doing. And then there was another one where I brought all my kids to Japan. And then I did that show as well. And so this one was a little different premise because they wanted to find this half talent. And I didn't even know that I was the first one because there are a few half singers that I knew. But they told me that not many of them have done variety shows. And mine was like the original slapstick kind of SNL type show. And they needed someone who was henna gaijin, which is weird, foreigner,
Right.
and to just be there. So I started this new show on TV called Uwasa no Channel, and it became a hit. And I don't know, I was speaking Japanese, so they didn't think I was I'm a gaijin who spoke Japanese, but then I don't know if they were looking at me as a half or, it wasn't like that. I didn't feel any kind of weirdness being a half at the time.
Interesting, because I would have assumed that in the past it might have been more like, oh, you're different and you're an outsider.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I was 17, so that was pretty like close to 50 years ago, and. The thing is, I was born in 1955, and war ended in 1945. There was a lot of kids who were born out of wedlock or whatever during that time with the GIs, and so there were a lot of halves, and there was this whole stigma of being a half means that you don't have a father, and then we don't even know where you really came from, and. Unfortunately for these kids, a lot of them did go to Japanese school and they didn't speak any English, but they did not look Japanese. So I think they really didn't have a very good experience growing up in Japan. It was really hard. For me, my father's parents ran away from Russia during the revolution and were Russian, and they immigrated in Japan. So my father was born in Japan. So he spoke fluent Japanese, but went to an American school. So he spoke English, and then he definitely wanted his kids to go to an American school because he knew that the kids were not going to look Japanese.
Right.
And his very good friend, Victor Starfin, was a very famous baseball player. He played for Yomiuri Giants, and he had a son who really looked like me, I guess, and didn't speak any English. And he was ostracized, and so my dad kind of knew about that too. So he wanted his kids to speak English. And so my experience really wasn't so bad. The only thing is people used to point fingers at me in the train that I was a gaijin, but it didn't really bother me. And I lived in Nippori and also in Meguro, and these are the places where both my grandparents lived, and they were, they lived there for a long time. So everybody around that neighborhood knew us and treated me very, very well. So I have heard of stories where somebody got stoned from people. I mean, horrible stories.
Oh my gosh.
So nothing bad ever happened to me. So, I don't have any exciting stories to tell you, except that it was not so bad for me.
Well, that's good. It's really nice to hear a positive side of growing up in Japan before, because I have heard those really negative stories too, where people, they don't look Japanese.
Than what I experienced growing up. So, it's really sad. But Japan's a homogeneous country, right? I mean, it was closed for so long. They don't like foreigners so much. I mean, foreign, I think. They don't trust it. So I could sort of understand from the history of Japan that it's very hard for them to accept something new.
Very true.
We're sort of new. And my mom, when she was marrying my dad, my grandfather on my mom's side said, "I'm going to disown you if you marry that guy."
Really?
But the Russian wedding was at a church, and the parents don't have to go. So he said, "Look, if your daughter comes to the church, she's mine, and we're married." So, and that's what happened.
Wow.
My father and my grandparents, immediately my grandpa decided, God, this is not so good, because they had like the real Russian wedding, which is like 3 days, 3 nights or something like that. And then my grandpa said, God, I want to give them a better wedding than that. So after that, they just, mingled. They were okay. And then they play mahjong together. And then and we're very, very close.
That's amazing that they could reconcile their differences and finally come together as a family, even though it was a time where that was really not so common. So
I don't know any of these stories actually. This is all new to me.
Well, this is a really important interview then. What Chris Okano doesn't even know about his own mother.
She has a long, complicated, kind of interesting history that there's just many interesting stories. So it's hard to keep track of all of them.
Yeah. Maybe you're just not listening well enough, Chris.
That's a good one. That's right. He doesn't listen. Surprise.
Wow. But anyway, speaking of your experience in Japan, you said it wasn't so challenging, like how...
It wasn't challenging for me. Right. And then because I was a half, and my mom had a friend who was in a modeling agency, and in Japan, all the Japanese girls, when they were in maybe middle school and high school, the schools don't allow you to work. And so they could never find a teenage girl to model for clothes. So anyway, she asked if I would do it. I said, yeah. So I was like 9 years old when I first started modeling.
Wow.
And, but just for there was a thing called Teen Look. There was all these magazines like that. And then naturally the other models were also half, because a lot of the Japanese could not do it.
Is that the reason? Is that the reason why they started using so many half Japanese models?
All I know is when I was modeling, a lot of the girls were half. And some of them didn't have fathers. Some of them didn't even speak English. And others they did, and they went to the schools in the military compound because their fathers were in the military.
Right.
And the mom's Japanese. I rarely did I see Japanese girls.
That is so interesting. Do you think that this could be also related to, was it kind of a fad? Like the half Japanese look was
not more than
nice,
the fact that they couldn't find anybody, a teenager to model for clothes. There was no such thing. And then once I became 17 or so, that's, by that time, when everybody finishes high school, I think they're allowed to work. But I don't think Japanese schools allowed kids to work.
Right. I've heard that as well. A lot of schools were, even now, some schools are strict about not allowing part-time work. But I never knew that was the reason for starting this trend of half Japanese models. Now, of course, it's become so common that people actually want that look, they want that.
I think a lot of it's not more halves rather than, I think in my days I didn't see a lot of foreigners,
right,
except for the kids at school. Now when I go back to Japan, it's like all these white people, black people, whatever, I mean they're everybody lives in Japan, and they all speak Japanese. and they're
Right.
working in Japan. And I didn't see those kind of people before. I mean, seriously, not many Americans were there or Europeans were there. I mean, really, they were there for a couple of years to work,
Mm-hmm.
but basically, people were not residing in Japan.
That's right. It's very true. It's actually even I've been in Japan for 9 years now, and even during that time, I've seen a huge change in the number of foreign people who live in Tokyo. When I first got here, even I looked pretty Japanese, but people would still kind of look at me as if I was different, even though I don't look that foreign. But people would still kind of glance like, are you not Japanese? But nowadays it's become gradually so much more common that foreign people or non-Japanese people are all around Tokyo, and now we kind of blend in and it's normal. So it's a huge change in just less than 10 years, which is amazing. So I can imagine before, like
when I go to Japan, I'm always surprised at how many foreigners there are. And they're not really foreigners because they live there.
Yeah, exactly. They're not just tourists anymore. Like there's so many people who live and work here.
Like you.
Like me and like you.
No, you're more Japanese. You're practically Japanese.
Except you're 3/4 Japanese.
Yeah.
So you're actually
More Japanese than
genetically
both
more
of you, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
But the least Japanese inside, I think. Yeah.
We are like actually half, like 50-50, but you are
75,
more
25.
Japanese. Yeah.
We're very special.
We are very special, so we like to think.
No, the more special thing is that not many people understand that I'm 3/4. For some reason, in Japan, you're either full Japanese, full American, or half. There's no such thing as 25 or 75.
They don't understand.
They don't understand. I say I'm 4分の3 Nihonjin,
Yeah.
3/4 Japanese, and they
They're
always go, huh? And they always go, how is that
The
possible?
calculations going around.
And they're supposed to be really good at math, right? Come on, it makes 150 equals 75, right?
Yeah. I don't know why it's so confusing. I think there just are not as many, like
3/4.
as many 3/4 people like you.
Blood there. Whereas like in America, if you ask someone, what are you? They go, well, I've got Italian, Irish, and I mean, they name everything.
That's so true.
Right? So
Even though
they could talk
maybe
about,
Italian.
I'm like, quarter of this, quarter of that, and it makes sense. But in Japan, I don't think it's like, they don't mix things.
It's so true. So it's just like a concept that hasn't really existed before. Half is like the newest thing, pretty much. Yeah. But so things have obviously changed from, a while ago being half in Japan and now. Do you, maybe in the case of, like you're in Maggie's case, you haven't been in Japan for a long time recently, so you don't know how it's changed exactly. But just from your perception, do you feel like Japan has become more accepting of foreign
God,
people?
I think so. Oh my
and
goodness.
half people?
Even the taxi drivers speak English. I mean, it's amazing. I think they're not staring at you anymore.
Right.
There's little changes, but I just think that everybody thinks that this is normal now. Whereas when I was growing up, I stood out because there weren't many people on the train who looked like me. We were just those gaijin, those people, and I was the part of those people.
Right.
And it was weird for me because my first language was Japanese, and I kind of identify myself as Japanese. My mom's Japanese. I go to my grandma's house, and I've got so many uncles and aunts, and then of course I identified myself as Russian because when I go to my other grandma and grandpa's house, they're all Russians and they're all speaking Russian. So for me, that was a norm. And so when people used to call me and say, hey, you're a gaijin. I said, what do you mean? I'm not gaijin. I used to say that to them too. In the train, I'm not, and they'd look at me because they know that I speak Japanese.
Right. That's very true. So it's good that, I think the staring thing is a big thing. Like, before people would really stare, because also I understand just because you stand out so much, where everyone has dark hair and around the same height. If you have lighter hair and you're a bit taller, you just stand out so much. So it's cool that it's become, society's changed enough that we don't stick out as much and people don't stare or point at you. Do
But I
you?
think-
It's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think besides that, I'm kind of curious as to why then the Naomi Osaka debate is such a hot topic still, where
True.
it's not accepted.
No, but
right?
you have to understand that I think even in America too, now it's a lot more accepting. But when you are married to a black person, it's like a whole different thing too. And you could talk to any black people how even in America things are not changing, although it's we had a black president and you think everybody's more progressive and they know about everybody, but it's still sort of something that people talk about.
Mhm.
And so you have to understand that Japan, I mean, even though there are a lot of foreigners and they're sort of accepting, or so it seems, the fact that she's half black, I think, is also a big topic there. And I think that, I mean, there are a lot of, I knew black, half Japanese people, and they were musicians, they were doing things, but it was really rare to see.
So I guess we can also.
And also because they only spoke Japanese too, so that was kind of
Wait, you know what? Just remembered. It was
Yeah.
it's kind of evident in that how. Do you remember like the girl who represented Miss Japan?
I was just gonna say the same
she was
thing.
from Nagasaki, right?
Right.
She was also half black, half Japanese,
Yeah.
and also kind of given a lot of hatred from Japanese people about how can a half black person represent Japan.
That's right.
She doesn't look Japanese, is what they said, right?
But I think they do that. I think they do that if, let's say, I was on a pageant to represent in Japan, because I don't look Japanese. So I think in terms of that, I don't think it's being black, but I think you don't look Japanese.
Right.
But I think,
So it's not
the point I was trying to make was, is it a coincidence that the two hottest topics of being half Japanese that are being controversially discussed about in Japan, in both scenarios, it's a half black, half Japanese celebrity? Is that really a coincidence, or is that exactly what she was talking about? How maybe it's kind of hard to accept a half black, half anything, I guess.
I think it's a combination of that and the fact that they don't look Japanese.
Yeah.
And then
So them to be representing Japan, they're not supposed to look like that.
well, then we can also just leeway into that about how there's a lot of news articles written by a very famous African American writer in Japan named Bay McNeil, who basically talked about the Nishin whitewashing of Naomi Osaka's face, making her look white. And if you actually look at the comparison, there's actually like side-by-side pictures of Naomi Osaka, how she looks in the picture and what they kind of portrayed her to be.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, obviously the photoshopping was horrible. I don't know what happened there, but he basically goes into detail about that this still is an ongoing issue, very much so. And the article got picked up by a lot of major U.S. media outlets, and I think it is a topic that needs to be kind of raised more awareness about, just because it is kind of something that should be changed, especially in Japan.
Very true.
How both scenarios, like we talked about, the Miss Japan as well as now Naomi Osaka having the same issues.
Right. Yeah. Very true. I think like as Maggie was saying too, part of it is mainly just not being Japanese. Like it's not so much of a like what is your other race, but I think there is also a long history of like preference of whiteness. And that might just be, even you can see that in Japanese skincare products like bihaku. People prefer to have like snow white skin. And I think there's been a tendency to want to erase blackness, essentially. Like I don't want to say that, I'm not saying it's a negative thing at all. It's just like it's a thing that's been happening in Japan.
Though, I think it's not more the black issue. It's more like in Japan, they think that if your skin is dark, and there are Japanese people with darker skin, and they want to look white, is because you're dark because you're a farmer or whatever and you're out in the fields all the time, and they don't be that person. You want to be the princess, and then if you are the princess, then you're indoors and you're supposed to look white. So they put on all these makeup to whiten your skin.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of the Asians have that. So there's a lot
Exactly.
of products like that in Korea too.
China,
And
Philippines,
I don't Korean
all
every
kinds
day, but I feel like they really take care of their skin and they make sure that they don't like go out in the sun. I live in Los Angeles, and I there's a lot of Korean people who live here, and I always see them with hats, and they have the gloves on, they have long sleeves on, and no one wants to get suntanned.
It's very true. I think that's 100% the origin of preference to whiteness. It's just because of the, eliteness. If you were white, you were rich and you didn't have to work outside in the fields. But obviously that beauty ideal has continued, and I think unfortunately it also influences people of color who, it doesn't matter if they are working outside or not. Like, that's the skin color you're born with, and it's not as easily accepted within the Japanese perceptions of beauty, maybe, or just something that they can accept as easily. But
About beauty, but I just feel that even in America, there's a lot of prejudice still, and I mean we've come a long way, but it's not. There's a lot of prejudice, and I have a lot of African American friends, and they could tell me all the things that, and every one of them are educated. They live in a lovely place, but if they wear a baseball cap and driving a Mercedes, they'll tell you that the police will stop them.
that's
If they're
terrible.
they're driving around Beverly Hills. So it's still there. It's still ongoing, and I don't think it's just Japan.
Very true. Yeah, I think it's something that still exists all over. But speaking of driving too, I've heard the same issue in Japan. Like, if you're a foreigner driving a car, you're more likely to get stopped by the police for a random check for something, or even if you're just walking down the street, they might stop you and ask you for your gaijin card. And that's problematic if you're half Japanese, because you wouldn't have a foreign residence card. You're a citizen. And so you say, oh, I don't have a card. And they'll be like, but you're a foreigner. And then they'll take you to the police station to interrogate you.
Really?
That's happened to a couple of my friends before. And I'm just like blown away. And their time is wasted while they're being interrogated. In the end, they find out they're Japanese. And they're like, okay, sorry to waste your time. But going back to what we were talking about earlier, Maggie Minenko's return to TV recently.
Yeah.
That was actually like a huge thing, and I watched it on TV too. And I was kind of wondering, I wanted to ask more about like what it is like starting out your career on TV in Japan, like before, when you started your career. And also what it was like, I guess, like what the TV sets and things are like now. Like, as you experienced that recently, how has it changed, and what was it like before?
It's so weird. It really hasn't changed much.
Really?
And I was really shocked too. The thing is, I was on NTV, which is Channel 4, and that's the network that I was on in Wasana Channel. They moved from, I think, like Shinjuku area to this place near Shimbashi, but I don't know. It was so strange. The studio looked kind of, dated. And all right, sit over here until the curtain opens, and then the curtain opened, and I'm supposed to walk over. But everything about it seemed, I mean, seriously, it was the same as when I did it 21 years ago and when I did it 40 whatever years ago. It hasn't really changed much, and I was really, really shocked.
That is so interesting.
I'm not too shocked though.
Actually,
I mean, Japanese, those traditional companies don't change often.
And but this is it, because when I first started, basically I wanted to be a singer, and so I recorded with the King Records. And then they said, first of all, in those days, like Sony was more like a hot recording company for young people. Like this King was sort of like very Jimmy. So they were going, why would this gaijin, record with them, whatever. But anyway, so I did, and they wanted me to be on TV before. That's the only way they could kind of promote my album. Well, at the time, it was just a little single. But so I went on TV, and basically I said, how come it's like this. Can I sing American songs? And can I do this? And they said, no, not yet. Japan's not really, they're not into that yet. But soon it's going to change and you'll be able to sing whatever songs you like. Well, that never changed, I think.
Oh.
It's just kind of weird. But when I was growing up, there was a show with the Peanuts. They were this two twins, and they used to sing. I forgot the title of the show, but they used to sing a bunch of American songs, and they used to harmonize. And basically, the people who were on that show, a lot of them sang Japanese songs, but half of the show, I'm sure, they sang English songs, American songs, the hits. And then all of a sudden, that went away. When I was on TV, it wasn't like that at all.
That's really strange.
It's weird, yeah.
Why do you think that switched? Like, where they were enjoying those American
I think
songs?
a lot of those entertaining things came from America.
Mm-hmm.
So they were listening to Far East Network, I guess, and listening to English-speaking songs. And so these girls would perform all over. And I'm sure they performed. And they, in Japan, there were a lot of military bases when I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those are the places where they went to sing.
Oh, interesting.
But there was Miyako Harumi, so there was like enka songs in Japan, but there were at that time. But the other half was people singing American songs.
Interesting. But then when you started singing, you did.
When I started singing, so that was when I was about 5 years old, and then 13 years later or whatever, that was no longer. People were not singing American songs; they were all singing Japanese songs, and they wrote songs for me too, which were Japanese,
Mm-hmm.
and I was singing, not really understanding the feel of what I was singing because. They were writing these songs for Japanese people with the Japanese feeling, and I certainly didn't have that. So I sang the songs.
But it clearly,
I think about it. It's like, wow. And I look at so I go to karaoke and I sing my songs, and I still have this going, oh, God. Like, I don't wait for a guy. What do you mean? I'm waiting for a guy. Are you kidding me? So it's kind of odd, but... Yeah.
That's really interesting. So they were kind of making these songs that were marketed toward the way that they thought women in Japan were, like, wait for guys and be that cute
real country western, in America. It's a sad story. It's always somebody leaving you, or if he goes, I'm going to be waiting for you forever, kind of thing. Like, that ain't happening.
But clearly it was a big hit. You had like a number of hit songs, and you can still sing them in karaoke.
So
I sing them in karaoke.
Yeah.
It became a hit, and then fortunately it's still in. If I go to Japanese karaoke places, I can find my songs,
which is so cool.
It's really cool.
Yes,
I'm very, very happy about that.
That's amazing.
It's usually my icebreaker. Whenever I talk to people, I go, "Hey, want to sing my mom's song at karaoke with me?"
But you know what?
Look at the lyrics though, which is very bad.
No, I'm pretty good at it.
I can't remember it.
So funny. I wanted to ask one more question though. In the clip that they showed on the TV show that you did recently, you were doing some konto, which is a Japanese skit, like sketch comedy, basically. How did that start exactly? And did you even really fully understand?
This show called What Was on a Channel
Mm-hmm.
had 20 minutes. When the show begins, it's live, and that was another reason I don't have any videotapes of myself in it. So, in those days, everything was live. So we were there at I think the show started at 9:00. So we were there actually for us because there were 5 of us who were the regulars. So we would go there at 11:00. We would do a read through, which is the dialogue. And then we change, whatever. We do Maggie says these, and, you say that, whatever, and we do that. And he goes, that's not funny. So that's when Wada Akiko said, say chichimoe. And I go, okay. So I said that, and when you're an 18-year-old girl asking, someone to, okay, massage my breast, they thought, oh my God, why is this young girl saying those words?
Yeah, why are you saying those? Why are you saying those words?
I didn't really care, and I figured, well, I'm not really asking anybody to do that. This is just a, skit. So we would do that, and then at 2:00 we go back to the studio and we actually tape it. And then like 6:00, if you're a singer, you go back and then they do, the sound check. And then at 9:00, the show begins. And then the skit is on for like 20 minutes. And then comes the singing part.
Oh, and everything's live? That's crazy.
Wow.
And then what was so crazy was one time, so in this particular, the show, I don't think they had it every week, but they would do a hit, 3 hits, like hits. Mm-hmm. So they, what's really popular right now. So they do like 3, top 3 songs. And so Wadakiko or the guest singer would sing, and then at one time they let me sing Mind Games because I could not sing Japanese songs, and Mind Games, which is the John Lennon song, was a hit. So I got to sing in English, which was fantastic. But then the next time, Sawada Kenji, who was Tigers, it's a band, he sang this real cool song, and I liked that song a lot, and I wanted to sing it, but I couldn't remember all the lyrics, so I decided to write everything on the what do you call it, the
teleprompter,
the kampe, yeah.
I know how to say it.
It's like a prompter, yeah.
So then I wrote everything down in hiragana because I can't read otherwise. And then what I noticed was, when I watch all these singers, they do have the kampe in front of them, but then, they look at the red light, and then they look at the audience, and then they look at the red light, and while they're doing it, they get to read the lyrics, right? And I thought, why am I just like reading the lyrics while I'm singing? That looks bad because I'm looking like this. So I thought, oh no, I'm going to do this too. So I looked up to the red dot and I'm singing, and I looked down and go, and I couldn't tell where it was because it's not English. So for me, when I see Japanese hiragana, I couldn't follow it. So there's one show that I was on that I'm standing there with a microphone. I sang maybe about 3 bars or something, and then the rest of the time I'm just like standing there. The music is going on, and I didn't know what to do.
Oh no!
So I got yelled at by the producer, but I was like, "What do you expect? I could sing Japanese, and I couldn't do it."
Oh my God!
It's live.
Oh no! Live! Oh, such
way
pressure.
that I could do that over. It was horrible.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, but I can feel you. Like reading in Japanese, like it throws you off if you're not used to it, because that's kind of my experience too, doing TV work sometimes. It's a risky. It's a risky.
The fact that I wanted to be cool like everybody else was the dumbest thing I ever did.
Oh my gosh. But this has been like such an interesting conversation. I could go on forever, and because I'm also kind of in the TV industry, so there's so much that I would want to ask you and learn more about, but maybe another time.
On my channel.
Oh, do I get to be part of that?
Of course.
Well then, yeah, maybe in part 2 we'll ask a few more questions.
So yeah, if you guys do want to know more about my mother, sounds pretty weird, then please check out my channel. She's gonna start asking for like money from me because I'm gonna start using her name everywhere. But yeah, please stay tuned for that. I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of unique interview that we are trying to push out. If you guys are interested in more of this kind of, they're not YouTubers or Instagrammers, but kind of more people influential in a different way, we would love to continue it. So please let us know if you guys have any suggestions down below. Thank you, Shizuka, for having me on again.
Thank you for showing up and making this an interesting interview. And thanks most of all to our star guest, Miss Maggie Minenko.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun. And now Chris knows who I am, finally.
Finally. Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone. And we hope you enjoyed this video. See you guys again in the next Tokyo Creative Talk.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.